Interestingly, you mentioned India just now, and I remember when I was myself I was at India, and I could relate to some of the observations that you made in terms of just that handshake between the public and private partnership, and you talked about the identity issue, the payments, and the synergy that must happen between these two aspects, and you see that playing out very well in India and how that has, you know, increased e-commerce, is increased fintech. You see the huge growth in those sectors. And I'm sure that you have, examples of other economies and what we can emulate from those economies. It would be nice to hear your perspective on how we can just follow in the footsteps of this economy, look at our specific, peculiarities in Nigeria and see if we can, learn or borrow something from what these economies are doing.
India is a good example for Nigeria in terms of demographic structure, in terms of showing inequalities, in terms of rural-urban divide. There's a whole lot that is very similar. And the question is if a 1 billion plus, an economy, a population of India that is nearly about 800 million or so can handle it in that vast subcontinent, despite those size, geographic, diversity challenge. India also has a diversity that is also similar to Nigeria. If India could do it, and through a coordinated digital policy infrastructure, the Indian Aadhaar, that is the identity system, they layered a payment infrastructure on top of it. And they've even done something this year. The world used to commend them for the Indian UPI, Universal Payment Infrastructure, that is sitting on top in real time on their universal ID system, UID, UPI on top of UID. India has gone ahead this year to launch what they call a ULI, first in the world, which is Universal Lending Infrastructure. So you now have Universal ID, then you have Universal Payment Infrastructure, and on top of it, you have Universal Lending Infrastructure, a public infrastructure that has records, identity, location, all the credit risk informations that are basic that a lender needs to have are sitting directly on top of payment transaction information, sitting on top of identity infrastructure. What that means is that the potential for a lender who is providing microcredit at scale to scale is so huge because you are not reinventing information. The information are there in the public system. So that's the kind of thing we have to learn. We have to learn. We have to coordinate identity payment and build what India has done, a ULI, Universal Learning Infrastructure on top of it. I mean, it's another example I always give in terms of data in Nigeria. Between 2010 and 2023, access to payments, digital payments in Nigeria grew from 32% to 52%. In the same period, 2010 to 2023, access to digital to credit grew only from 2% to 6%. 4% growth in 30 years. So one thing that we see clearly and we have a geographic problem. Payment is growing and it's not translating into access to credit. And part of the issues is some of these issues that we have to tackle. How could we build a payment infrastructure that also supports a credit system where the government plays its part and the private sector can innovate on top of that to accelerate access to credit? And it is in access to credit, microcredit, that we're going to have the biggest impact, biggest dent on poverty. Because when people can access their future income today, they can create wealth for themselves. They can become better entrepreneurs. So it's a problem we have to tackle and we have to fix because there is social impact returns on them if we tackle the digital policy infrastructure problem, and learning from markets like India will be very strong. Brazil has also done the same. Brazil saw what India did and implemented what they call the Brazilian PIX, PIX, and they have seen financial inclusion virtually double overnight. Also, Brazil, a very unequal country, very similar to Nigeria in demographic structure, they have been able to fix inclusion problem in a massive growth through a coordinated digital policy infrastructure. So it begs, is a cry for us we have to do our own so that we can have major leap in terms of financial access and impact in terms of denting poverty and creating an economy that is inclusive, that works for all our people in Nigeria.